Hey again, I'm Tom, aka Bamboo Leaves. If you're new here, this channel's for those of you who want to learn about making and releasing alternative electronic music. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing to this channel for more videos just like this one as I post them. If you've got any genres you'd like me to try and replicate, leave a comment down below and I'll see what I can do. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like and then you can get that algorithm going for me and that would really help me out. So with that out of the way, let's jump over to the DAW and we can go over this micro minimal hip hop track that I've made. Right on, let's start from the top and work our way down to the bottom. So first up, I've got this sidechain bus. So this is where I'm routing all of the instruments that I want to apply some sidechaining to, and then I've got some MIDI notes playing when I want that sidechain to cut in. So I will ignore this track for now and we can come back to that later. First up, we've got this kind of the atmosphere building tracks on here. So first up, I've got this vinyl crackle. Simple enough. Building the atmosphere, giving it a bit of a lo-fi feel. I've next got this field atmosphere nighttime ambience. Gives a little bit of air crisp to it and kind of gives that more natural feel. And again, I've got this coffee house atmosphere piece of field recording as well. So if I just play them all together. So I've just got that really low in the mix just to sort of form a bed to give that atmosphere to the track. And this is kind of part of that lo-fi hip hop genre. So like I say, I've bussed that one off to the sidechain bus at the start through making sure that the output is going to bus 10 and then bus 10 routes off through to this sidechain bus on my LFO tool where I've got that sidechained in there, and that's where I'm going to get these sidechains for the kicks that are going to come later on. So I follow that pattern for anything that I want to do a sidechaining for. Right, okay, so now let's get on to the instrumental parts of it. First we've got these Sine keys. Alright, so some sort of jazzy chords where I'm spreading the notes out and making them lead into each other rather than playing them all together. I'm giving that more jagged feel with the sweeping notes. So without any effects processing, it sounds like this. And that is from the quick sampler that is just loaded with the default patch, which is some sine wave samples, so it already sounds like a sort of an organ, some keys sound, and I've used the amp envelope to make it more plucky. I've got a little bit of pitch wobble on there as well, so I've got this target set to pitch, which is the pitch up here, and I've got this wheel dragged off so that it impacts the pitch a little bit, so you've got that wobble, so with it really far over to the side. So just a little bit gives it that nice wavy disclosure sort of sound. Got a compressor on there, EQ to cut out some of those frequencies and boost some of the higher ones. I've got a gain on there to make sure that it's monoed. Right down the middle, I've put a Valhalla vintage verb on there to give it some space. And I've put a OTT compressor on there. This is the first time I've started using this. It's free, so you can download it as well. Gives it that really aggressive compression that, you know, some people, it's a bit too much for their taste, but I quite like it on these keys. Just to get that really aggressive compression that I'm putting after the reverb. So the reverb's going through there and it's giving that sort of warped space feel. To complement some of those rolling keys, I've got this Foley roll sound. Just, and I've got that playing along with the keys, so it sort of sounds a bit more realistic, like it's some sort of organ. Cut some sort of rolling sound down a little bit and just dragged it on where it looked like it sounded good. So this next part, I've got this Sine bounce. So listen to it. So that is me having bounced down the Sine keys to audio. So I went and right clicked and bounce in place, and that would have bounced that down. I had that track just there again. I'd have taken it, I reversed, and I just took a couple of those and I dotted them across the timeline. And so that I could, before some sort of stop-start bits, I could have this reverse sound. So it goes just before those claps. Next, I've got this sub bass. So that is really quiet, just some really stabby short notes. So I'm keeping it minimal, keeping it tight with these subby notes. For that one, I've used the quick sampler that's got that sine wave again, and I've just left it at that. So a really low note in that sine wave gives a good sub, and I'm just playing it to complement some of those kicks. And I just dotted them around, I experimented to see where it sounded quite groovy, quite wavy, and I just threw in those sub notes there. In the second half of this track, we get this muted synth sound. I've taken most of the same notes from the Sine keys from before, and I've just dragged them onto a new track. I then opened up a retro synth with this filter envelope that opens and closes. That's where you're getting that brass sort of sound, is from this opening and closing of this filter envelope. I pulled the filter quite low, and so it opens up and closes down, and that's where you're getting that sort of brass sound from. To really spread it out wide, I put a sample delay on there, and I just sort of delayed the right hand signal a little bit so that it pushed it out completely wide to leave a bit of space. And again, I've put an OTT on there to compress it and make it sound a bit more aggressive and in your face. So without it, and with it. And then I've got that bust off to a room reverb sound. So it kind of sounds like it's in a bit of a natural room space as well. For that muted synth, I've got a little bit of automation on there so that it will open up that filter a little bit as it gets further through. You'll be able to see that this filter opens up a little bit as the automation goes by. So that just kind of keeps it moving, keeps it interesting. Next, we've got these arpeggiated synth trickly sounds. So that's a retro synth again. I've got the filter envelope and the amp envelope configured so that it's more of like a plucking sound. I've got an arpeggiator on there so that when you play some notes, so with those 32 triplets going upwards and having an octave range of 2, arpeggiated, rain, trickly kind of sound. Added a echo on there to give a little bit more interest, and an OTT. So I'm kind of really trying out this OTT on this track. So without those effects on it, sounds a bit more like this. But with the effect. Next, I've got this Arp bounce track. So So I've done the same thing as I did for the synth, the sine keys before, where I bounced those arpeggiated notes down to audio, I reversed them, and I took a couple of those parts and I just sort of dotted them in. And on top of that, I've added a tremolo so that it moves around the stereo field. So if I play all of it, you might be able to hear those. It's quite quiet in the mix. So it's just something to build up that atmosphere, keeping it simple, but some quiet things in the mix to keep it interesting as well. Next, we got this sample of a sitar, I think. Just for that, there was a sitar sample somewhere. I dragged different parts of it and I kind of cut it and made it go onto the beat. It looks like over here I've cut one of those and reversed it, so it goes playing around with the different parts of the audio, reversing things, cutting it, putting it onto the bar. I wanted to give that sort of world instrumental element to this as well. If I take off all the processing, so I put on a high pass filter, I put a pitch shifter on there, so I've got an octave higher mixed in by 23%. Brings in an octave on top of it. I've got a tremolo that will be shifting it to the left and the right. And then a big old lush Valhalla vintage reverb. Now we've got the drums, the hip hoppy swinging drums. To get a bit more context. Whenever one of these kicks will play, I have a sidechain MIDI note that will also trigger off at the same time, and that will make sure that all these instrumental parts are ducking and leaving space for these kicks. So let's listen to the kicks. So the first one, I've got this kick that is a louder one and it's a bit more opened up. The high ends have been rolled off, so it's a bit more rounded sounding. And I've got this muted kick, which is similar in its processing, a bit more high end rolled off, but it's just a bit quieter. So I've pulled the volume down so that the first kick plays off the second kick a little bit. And that's kind of where I'm getting a bit more of that swinging with the varied kick drums. It sounds a bit more natural, like someone's actually playing it. I've got these claps, so like these really muted claps, really short, really muted. If I were to drag them out, much more full, but I wanted to have that minimal tight sounding clap, so I shortened the sample and I faded off one of these samples so that it was even shorter, and that's where you're getting that tight clap sound from. And I've dragged them off so that they don't play at the same time. So these ones tend to play at a similar time, but if you just go across to the right, you can see that they're dragged off a little bit. So it sounds like this. So I've got a bit of variation in here where you have claps that are playing at the same time, claps that are sort of playing off each other, longer ones, shorter ones. It gives that kind of more natural feel, but these tight claps are what gives it that minimal, micro-y, hip-hoppy vibe. I have a reverberated clap. So that's just one of those other clap samples I've dragged onto it that I've layered on top, and I've just added a reverb onto there basically that will just occasionally end the phrase with like a bigger reverberated clap. Okay, so next I've got this muted hi-hat. It's not actually a hi-hat, I think it's just some percussive like hit. I've got these just playing on like, you know, really offbeat, and I played around with it to get that swing, so things were playing kind of a little bit after when they should be to get that laid back late feel, and then sometimes I drag them a little bit before when they should sound to give that expedited feel. So you got the push and the pull that gives the swing to this kind of drum beat, and on top of that I've got a tremolo so it just moves across the stereo field as it plays. So you've really just got to mess around with where you're putting these kicks, claps, hi-hats to give that swinging, groovy feel. I've got a little shaker that occasionally makes an appearance. And then in the second half of the track, I've got this wood effect. Some Foley wood sounds that are just sort of playing there. And I've put some processing on there to make it kind of thin, wide, and reverberant, basically. So if I play all of that together, you can hear it. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. If you've got any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll get around to answering them when I can. Once again, if you like this video, leave a like and consider subscribing to this channel for more videos just like this one. Other than that, I'll catch you in the next one.